very much, Maya. And listen, thank you very much for having me today and coming to listen to this talk. As Maya's just said, unfortunately, it's a whistle-stop tour, so I've come dressed accordingly. What I'm keen to talk to you about today, and that's quite small, so I'm going to have to put my reading glasses on, is actually the PRCA's big mission, solving PR's big problem as I see it. I'd like to talk to you about how we reached our new definition and what that means for measurement and evaluation. And then I'd like to talk to you about what's next. And then hopefully we can still leave a little bit of time for questions. I appreciate that time is limited today, and Jono will kill me if I run over. So let me just talk to you firstly about the PRCA's big mission as we see it. And the first thing that we're doing is we're working really hard to make sure that people better understand public relations in its widest sense. And with that, invest more heavily in our services. We're also looking at, in terms of actual action, leading this transition to what I see as higher value work, so strategic advisory work, and moving away from services that are a little bit more commoditizable. And of course, as we've heard this morning from both Jim and from Greg at Muckrank, there's a huge opportunity for this industry at the moment with Geo. And in my belief, that's our opportunity to grab, and we need to lean into it as hard as we can. And then, of course, a real key point for a trade association, and the PRCA, for those who don't know us, is the largest trade association of its kind in the world. It's about championing standards and ethics through our code of conduct and the code for professional lobbying. So those in public affairs not only adhere to our rigorous code of conduct, they also have to adhere to our code for professional lobbying too, which I believe is the strictest in the business. Now, how did we get to redefine public relations within the PRCA community? It's not that we were being arrogant. It's not that we thought we could speak on behalf of the wider industry. Two things happened. And the first one was that I got a call out the blue on a Wednesday evening in December, and I was asked by Radio 4's Today programme to go on the next morning to talk about storytelling. Now, I thought it was going to be a very simple chit-chat accompanied by Sir Martin Sorrell, the bigwig titan of the advertising industry, to explain to listeners about the importance of storytelling, how the two industries work together. But no, that was not to be the case. And thankfully, one of my PR and comms board had said to me, I hope he's not too, I think the word was something like cantankerous today. And I hadn't really thought about it. I don't know Martin apart from, his legend. But it made me put on a little bit more guard than I would otherwise have done. And I was very grateful because it actually turned into quite a challenging chit-chat in which Sir Martin declared PR dead and told listeners that actually, brands should just flood the internet with content. Effectively, just pay more, flood the zone. And of course, something that I do not believe in and rebutted very, very heavily. And it was very clear from that conversation that Sir Martin, despite all his years in the industry and many around him, I'm sure this is something that feels familiar to many, equates public relations with media relations, and I found that really frustrating, which for me created a light bulb moment. And I thought, hang on a minute, if even people in our industry who are supposed to be on our side think this, or that's the narrative they're willing to peddle despite the fact they're doing it via media relations, we need to solve the age-old problem, which is PR isn't good at its own PR. And what does that mean? That means actually letting people know what we do day in, day out, and the value that we bring. Now, I have gone through my entire career with people not understanding really what it is I do. Lots of people talk about being shorthand for media relations and crisis management. And if you Google PR and the PR problem, there are 1,000,001 headlines that pop up immediately in Google. Pretty much everybody says we're the industry that can't actually explain itself. So this meant that I decided that with the support of my management board, we needed to clear this up, particularly at a point where I think we're in a transitional moment, a transformational moment for our industry. And so we decided to ask our member community what they thought and help us redefine the definition of PR, or the definitions of PR currently out there and in circulation. Now, we did it deliberately, purely as a PRCA member consultation for two reasons. One, we wouldn't be arrogant enough to speak on behalf of the industry, and you can imagine the mammoth task that would be going out globally to try and get consistency of agreement if we were to do that. But secondly, I want my members to have competitive and commercial advantage, and that means speaking in a way to business that they will start to hire us more and invest more heavily in the services as per our big mission. So we deliberately developed it for and by the PRCA community, although anybody can use the final definition with attribution. What was really good about this is that while we got quite a lot of feedback, not all of it positive, as you'd expect, this was a proper consultation and we had to take any negative comments on the chin, including from people outside of our community, member community. Everybody who responded endorsed the need for a new definition. Now, in my view, the best one I think is out there currently is the Chartered Institute of Public Relations one, but in my opinion, it speaks to the industry, to our sector, doesn't really talk to business or policymakers in the way that we wanted. And the respondents also said that they felt that the core principles, which I'll talk through, did reflect a broad, more contemporary understanding of PR practice and that important shift away from publicity that we've always been stuck to, that harness to. Now, I'm not saying we need to completely move away from that, because obviously we come back to the geo point, that is really, really important. But we need to be seen as a higher value strategic service, not just media relations. And no one, not one person, disputed the framing of PR as having the potential to operate as a strategic management discipline at board level. What was interesting is during the different debates, not necessarily during the written submissions, people recognise that as an industry there is still perhaps a skills gap that we need to address in order for us to inhabit that higher ground. So, what did we land on as the PRCA global community? And just to remind you that we are a global community, it was not just the UK. This is what people finally agreed on in terms of the abridged version that could be used and dropped in very easily. That's that public relations is the strategic management discipline that builds trust, enhances reputation, and helps leaders interpret complexity and manage volatility, delivering measurable outcomes, including stakeholder confidence, long-term value creation, and commercial growth. Now, that was really, really important for my members because they wanted to demonstrate two things. The fact that they do strategic advisory, but really, and that we're talking at board level, but really leaning into the societal and economic outcomes, the commercial outcomes that we never really have done so in the past, where advertising and marketing have had real success in doing that and also taking budget from us. Now, I'll not read through this one because everybody will be able to read it, and it's quite long, and you will be able to find that obviously online. But you'll see that the extended version is a little bit more wordy, but does really talk to, for me, this talks to the industry in terms of the skill set that we need and where we should be. So my view is it's the board advisory piece that we should all be reaching for, and that we're certainly working with our members and heading to in terms of them building their capability and skill sets. Because as I said to Sir Martin on Radio 4, loudly and proudly, we're not just people who are brought in when there's a crisis. We're not just the people who are doing media relations. We're doing futures and foresights work. We're doing data and insights, the stakeholder mapping and engagement, that all these good things that if you're on a leadership and management course, you're taught to do. The problem is that directors are not taught to connect all those good high-value things with the PR function. And that's one of the things that we're trying to fix here at the PRCA. So as you can see, all those great things that are absolutely integral to organisational success, but people aren't connecting the dots in terms of saying, OK, I need a strategic communicator to do that. And of course, I'll be saying you need a PRCA member to do that because they also adhere to a code of conduct and they're committed to CPD. But this is the key thing. We deliver. And if you think about what Jim said this morning, for those who heard Jim McNamara's excellent session, it's about two-way engagement, shaping perception, informing decision-making, supporting behaviour change, building commercial revenues, because we do that. Why don't we talk about it? And creating societal and economic impact. We need to be more bullish about that. And right now we absolutely do, because we're in, and Jim also talked about this, in a very fractured society, we're in a very sick world. And if you look around, all the right-wing rhetoric, all the things that are happening, strategic communications is needed more than ever to foster communications and broker understanding between disparate groups. We are the people who build trust. We are the people who bring lifetime value. We don't just shift one heap of, like 100,000 units because we've put a bit of paid content on the web. We actually create lifetime value because we engage with the customer. We fess up when we get it wrong. We fix things operationally if they're not right. And we talk to customers in the way that they want to be talked to in their space and understand their needs. That is PR in the best sense, not just talking at people and hoping that they'll buy from us. So, I really believe that this genuinely shows how we can help individuals and organisations succeed. And I'm really proud of where the community landed with that. In terms of the underlying principles, we did publish these as well. So again, these are readily available, but we wanted to be very much relation-centred. It is so important that right now in a very transactional world, we lean into our skills as sense makers who can do the critical thinking, not just with driving AI, but the critical thinking within organisations, bringing an ethical compass, and that we're not just output focused. That relationship element is going to come to the fore, and it's more important than ever. Earned credibility still is a really key primary currency for us, and never more so with Geo. Of course, I'm going to say this, but strategic counsel at the highest level, if we want this industry to be completely transformed, and I think it's probably going to contract a little bit before we get there, but with Geo, with the need for strategic communications at its best, I really believe that we are on the ascendancy if we get the skill set right and we talk assertively with one united voice. And I don't just mean within the PRCA, I mean me, AMEC, all the other fantastic media organisations out there, Provoke, anybody operating this space, we need to unite at this point, and we need to tell that story externally. It's very much this new definition about two-way engagement, not one-way broadcasting, as you'd expect, listening, fixing things, doing all that good stuff, bringing in all the multi-stakeholder orientation, and as you'd expect, and I think, again, this is where we can really lean into, navigating complexity and managing risk. People forget that we do an awful lot of risk preparedness work because we don't talk about it enough. Why aren't we doing that? Right now, in an LLM world, why are we not being the first port of call for anybody wanting to manage their online reputation? I'm sounding a bit pissy because actually it really narks me that we're literally not seen as the people who do that. We are the reputation custodians. Absolutely, we should be shouting about this. And of course, we do this through, all the good work through platform agnostic storytelling, shaping the information ecosystem. And you might have seen that last week, well, this week, what day is it? I can't remember. Friday, I think it was. We put out a statement because you know what? We're trying to show leadership on this because with Geo, there is a massive opportunity for this to go terribly wrong for us. We can take Geo and we can make it ours and we can really deliver excellent work while growing our industry through Geo, as long as we behave ethically and not seen to misrepresent brands. Because once we get our heads around how we can do that through brand mentions, you can see how the bad actors might want to manipulate that. We, as an industry, have to stand against that, and we've already issued a rallying call on that. I mentioned long-term value over short-term noise. That's where I believe we can beat the big marketing and advertising boys. And of course, everything we do has to be grounded in insight and evidence. And I'm really glad that within our membership and beyond, there are so many wonderful examples about the excellent work that's being done that speaks to our new definition. So, how are we going to measure this? Well, I'm throwing that out to all my friends here today and the AMEC community. But fundamentally, we've got to move beyond comms metrics. We've got to demonstrate value to management. I actually think when we're doing that higher value work, this whole conversation becomes a little bit less needed because you know what? Management see it. If you're doing features and foresights work, you're helping sense check within the environment. You're providing ethical counsel. Management teams don't go, ooh, why have we got them? What are they here for? Why are we investing in them? They're like, shit, bring them in, get them in the table. What's the PR people think? That's where we need to move towards. But we also do need to be able to formally measure all this. So, I will be, talking more closely to the team at AMIC, who are already doing fantastic work in this space. And I, for one, am incredibly grateful for that and for their partnership. So, what next at the PRCA? Well, I am intent on making public relations a separate asset class above marketing and advertising and closer to management, with standards and ethics at its core. Already, we've defined public relations, to make sure that people really understand what we're doing. So that's the first step. What we are also doing is advocating and championing this industry wherever we get the opportunity. We have commissioned CBI Economics in the UK to do some research, which will finally, for the first time ever, give us a figure for the economic and societal contribution that we make to the UK economy. And that will be a huge step forward when we're engaging with government, policymakers and business. And we know the new definition is cutting through with business because the feedback is really good from the business community and from the CBI itself. We're also busy engaging with policymakers and the business community and procurement specialists directly. One of the things that we know isn't happening is that procurement don't necessarily want to come out and talk to us. They don't really care about what we do. They're not really bothered about changing how they procure, which is a big problem. We have just published a definitive guide to public relations and public affairs procurement to help them understand this changing world, what online reputation means with this new world of LLMs, and actually why their scope of work should include ongoing reporting and misinformation readiness and all those good things that we do. It sits within our wheelhouse. And how the opportunity afforded by GO it really requires a strategic communicator, and that's where they should be putting their money rather than, again, these advertising and marketing briefs. And we're also pushing towards how we can help our membership build capacity, build the capability to evolve and grow through that transition to strategic advisory. There is nothing wrong with doing those commoditizable services, doing implementation and execution. They're all good stuff too. But if we want to survive, if we want to thrive, if we want to grow, right now is the opportunity for us to maximize on that. And so, lastly, we just need to make sure that we have a united voice. So my mission, outside of what I've already talked about here, is to talk to all the leaders that I have the privilege of being able to meet and saying, let's get behind this one mission. Let's make sure that people understand what we do, that they're investing appropriately, and that we are future-proofing our sector. Because, like I say, for me, the opportunity is huge, but it takes a united front to achieve it. So fractured society, low trust. We're the people that can help fix that. We can foster communications. We can broker understanding. We have never, ever been more needed. And I think it's an ethical onus on us to take a standpoint. At the PRCA, we're going to launch something soon called the Sector for Solidarity, because we cannot stand by and allow this right-wing rhetoric to rule the roost. We have to be able to step into that debate and show how people can have respectful conversations and start to understand better and like I say, foster that understanding. Online reputation in LM world, let's own that. We've seen too many opportunities go past. SEO was one. We can now eat their dinner. So let's do that. And let's, be the ones who step into helping businesses, helping directors with that business complexity where they need sense makers and they need ethical guidance. Again, that sits very nicely within our wheelhouse if we have the right skill set. And that's what I would like everybody to be thinking about. And so the call to action from me, with 42 seconds to go, is please join us. If you're not a member or a partner of ours already, get involved. We need all the big brains around the table right now. This is a very challenging environment, whichever country you look to, particularly in the UK. So please come and get involved. Do not flood the internet with paid content. Put all your money into public relations and public affairs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. It makes PR sound so grown up.
So exciting and grown up.
I love it. I've got we'll have time for like one question, I think, but I've got one. One thing I really noticed, and I love this kind of emphasis on really helping business and directors and being a strategic function. Where is creativity in the definition?
Oh, that's a good question. Do you know what? I was just thinking that I didn't mention it on the way through. That there was only, we had some people say, why aren't you learning more into media relations? And I think where we've landed, I'm very comfortable. Creative is something, I think, when we evolve this, because this needs to be a living, breathing definition that everybody needs to update more frequently. I mean, it's been a long time since there's been a new definition. I think that's something we probably will look to bring in. That is probably the omission that I come back to and think about most frequently. But it's a good call.
Thank you very much. And Provoker, totally with you on that anti-right-wing rhetoric thing. Anything we can do to help count us in. Does anyone have any questions for Sarah? No?
I scared everybody into
she's quite terrifying. She's a pussycat, really. Not that terrifying. Okay, in that case,